Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Cinema Recap. Thanks for joining us. Today, we're going to be looking at that 2016 sci-fi comedy called Colossal. It's a genre-defying film, so our movie opens up at a park in Seoul, in the middle of the night. A little girl is looking for her doll, when suddenly, she sees a giant monster walking through the buildings. The girl screams as that screen fades to black. Now, 25 years have passed, and we're across the world in NYC. Gloria returns home from a night out of partying. Her boyfriend Tim is fed up with her behavior. Ever since she got fired at work, all Gloria does is party all night and lays around on the couch during the day. He plainly tells her that she's an out-of-control mess, and then gestures to the bedroom, where all her things are already neatly packed away. Tim bounces after telling her that she'd better be gone by the time he returns. So with no job, no apartment, and no boyfriend, Gloria is forced to return to her childhood home in a small town. The place is seemingly abandoned. Leaves are covering the ground and there's no furniture. So Gloria is forced to sleep on the floor for the first night. Now the next morning, she heads out to buy some furniture, starting with an air mattress, and is dragging it home when a truck pulls up. It's her old acquaintance, Oscar, and he's delighted to see her back in town. Gloria gets in the truck and they end up hanging out at Oscar's bar, which he inherited from his father. Now Gloria, who's trying to stay away from drinking, is unnerved by the amount of alcohol on display. She scratches the top of her head, and Oscar asks what that's all about, and she tells him it's a nervous tic. Now that night, Oscar introduces her to some of his friends. He places a beer in front of her, and after agonizing over it for about 2 seconds, she casually takes a sip. A few hours later, and predictably, Gloria's drunk. The group roams around the bar, with Oscar showing Gloria the sectioned off area that he didn't have the money to renovate. He tells his buddies, Garth and Joel, that back in elementary school, Gloria would always win the short story writing competition every spring, with Oscar always in second place. She laughs it off, explaining that she doesn't write fiction anymore, just magazine articles. Oscar goes and gets another beer, and Joel tries to kiss Gloria. Well, Oscar freaks out, grabs his keys and leaves. Gloria, still tipsy, has to lug her air mattress back home. On the way, she drags it through her old elementary school playground. Now she manages to make it home by mid-morning and begins unpacking the air mattress when she dozes off. As she's sleeping, she dreams of herself as a child, wandering through a forest as the sky darkens and thunder rumbles. She wakes up to a phone call from her sister, who tells her that the city of Seoul suffered a monster attack in the night.
What?
Well, Gloria quickly pulls up the news articles on her laptop, and sure enough, there's footage of a giant monster materializing in Seoul for a few seconds before disappearing again. She calls Tim, who questions her as to why she's just now hearing about it when the attack happened 9 hours ago. She tries to evade the question, but Tim figures out that it's because she was drinking all night and begs her to seek professional help for alcoholism. Now that night, Gloria is out drinking again while watching the news footage of Seoul's attack. She stumbles out of the bar late at night and ends up falling asleep on a bench at the elementary school playground. In the morning, still drunk, she tries to call Tim as she stands, but he quickly notices that she's intoxicated and hangs up. So frustrated, she flings her phone to the ground. Now back at home, Oscar brings her an old TV. Together they drag it into an empty living room. He then informs her that the monster attacked Seoul again last night, but instead of walking around like the previous night, it just stood in one place and made weird hand gestures. The monster always materializes at the same time, 8:05 a.m. Now Oscar shows her a video on the internet of the monster's first appearance 25 years ago in Seoul. Back then it was just one sighting and assumed to be a hoax. So while setting up the TV, Oscar asks her if she remembers anything they spoke about last night, and she replies that she doesn't. We find out that Gloria told Oscar about her financial situation, as well as her breakup with Tim. Furthermore, Oscar offered her a job at the bar while she's in town. With the news of the monster, more and more people are at the bar every night to drink. With the offer still on the table, Gloria accepts it and hugs Oscar for being so kind to her. And as they hug, she notices the monster on the TV scratching its head the same way that she does when she's nervous. So that night while working at the bar, Gloria can't help but notice that the monster footage replaying on the bar's TV makes it look like as if it was on the phone, just like she was last night. Now back at home, she looks up for more footage on that monster, noticing that in the first sighting, it looked like it was lugging something along on its shoulder, the same way Gloria had done when she took her mattress home. She puts on a jacket and heads to the playground. Once there, she compares a map of Seoul to the playground structure. Now a few nights pass with seemingly no monster attacks. News reporters are puzzled at that lack of discernible patterns in the monster's movements or appearances. One of Oscar's friends, over drinks, postulates that it looks like it's being operated by a remote control because the monster's always moving forward but never pauses to look down. Gloria's getting more and more frightened. She spends days formulating her theories, charting maps of Seoul and the monster's movements. One day, map in hand and entirely sober, she heads to the elementary school playground and steps inside at exactly 8:05 a.m. She doesn't move forward, instead raises her arms above her head before rushing home. Now back at home, she turns on the TV to find out that, sure enough, the creature has made another appearance in Seoul. This time, it didn't destroy any buildings, it just stood there and raised its arms over its head just like Gloria did. Now that she's sure that somehow she's the monster that's been terrorizing Seoul, she calls up Tim. They exchange pleasantries, with Gloria telling him that she's found a part-time job. But their conversation is interrupted when the doorbell rings. Gloria forgets that she's on a call with Tim, as Oscar and his friend Garth drag a sofa into the living room before informing her that it's time for work. Now after work that night, Gloria, Oscar, and his friends are drinking when Gloria impulsively decides to tell them her newfound secret. She makes the group drive down to the playground and pull out a live feed of Seoul. With them watching the live stream, she steps into the playground and starts to dance. Sure enough, the monster materializes in Seoul, mimicking her movements exactly. Now in Seoul, NATO helicopters fire missiles at the monster and Gloria can feel it on her body. Still drunk, she punches the air around her, which destroys one of the helicopters back in Seoul. Gloria realizes that she just caused the death of whoever was in that helicopter and freaks out, losing her footing and falling to the ground. Sometime later, she wakes up in her house to the sounds of destruction on her TV. Oscar appears, holding a bag of groceries, and she asks him how many people she killed with that fall last night. She feels terrible and wants to go to the police station to turn herself in, when Oscar hands her today's newspaper. We find out that last night, when Gloria fell, a robot monster appeared in Seoul, as Oscar stepped into the playground to help her. Now they go to a nearby diner for breakfast to discuss their predicament. It seems that the monsters only show up for Gloria and Oscar. She pieces together that the last monster appearance, 25 years ago, must have been when she was walking to the elementary school as a kid. Back then, it wasn't a playground but a construction site with garbage and trees. Realizing this triggers Gloria's flashback, and she remembers her younger self walking to school one day with a project in hand, and a young Oscar behind her holding his own project. Now the next morning, the two wait on the bench next to the playground for the clock to strike 8:05. As they wait, Oscar confides that he's been following Gloria's career ever since she left town. Now at 8:05, Gloria gets in the playground, which causes that monster to materialize. And she bends down and writes out an apology message in Korean onto the ground, promising that the monster won't return again. So later that night at the bar, the news rewinds the footage of the monster writing in Korean on the ground, and Gloria watches while she works. After closing up, Oscar and his friends with Gloria chat over drinks as usual. Joel's excusing himself to go to the bathroom. As he's washing his hands, Gloria pops in to ask for his home address. Now Joel heads home early, with Gloria arriving shortly after. They spend the night together, and the next morning, just as she's headed home, Gloria sees on the news that the robot monster is in Seoul, taunting the business district. Gloria grabs Joel and they quickly drive to the playground, where Oscar's all drunk and walking around there, while watching the live stream of Seoul. Gloria berates him, but Oscar retorts that his monster hasn't killed anyone like hers had. Well, she walks into the playground and points for Oscar to get out. He refuses, so she slaps him. Now that night, as they're closing their shift at the bar, Oscar is upset and is doing a poor job of hiding it. Videos of his robot being slapped by Gloria's monster are viral, and he's begun to suspect that Joel and Gloria slept together. So slightly drunk, he berates his friend Garth, implying out loud that Garth is a cocaine addict. and then rudely bosses Gloria around.
Do your job.
We find out that Gloria hasn't been drinking for a few days now, scared that she'll end up drunk and in the playground. Oscar takes it as a personal attack, so he puts down a beer and tells her that if she doesn't drink it, he'll take a walk through the playground later.
I'll go take a walk through the park later.
She takes that drink and pours it onto the floor. Oscar gets into his truck and goes to the playground. She tries to stop him, but Oscar's yelling at her, saying that for once his life is just as amazing as hers, before driving off. She races after him on foot, and they both end up in the playground at 8:05. She punches him, and they get into another fight. She then tries to quit her job at the bar, but then he pushes and threatens her to come back the next day, saying that he'll destroy a whole neighborhood if she doesn't show up at work. Now back at home, Gloria is trying to sleep, and she begins to remember more of what she was doing that day 25 years ago when that monster first showed up. She was walking to school with a cardboard model of Soul in her hands when it flew away in a gust of wind. The little boy with her, presumably Oscar, climbs a fence into a construction site after it. The doorbell rings, and it's Joel on her doorstep with a truckload of furniture from Oscar, claiming that they're both ashamed of their behavior from the night before. Well, she doesn't know what to make of this, so she runs to Oscar's house to demand an explanation. Now, Oscar's place is a mess, with piles of trash and beer bottles on every surface. He apologizes for hurting her while breaking down into tears. He asks to be friends with her again, and she accepts as long as he stops drinking late at night. And when Gloria gets home, she finds that Joel has cleaned and decorated her once barren living room using the furniture Oscar sent. Her phone suddenly starts ringing, and it's a call from Tim. She ends up at a Holiday Inn hotel. Tim lets her into the suite and explains to her he's in the area for work-related reasons. Well, she catches that lie, deducing that Tim is just jealous. The conversation quickly turns into an argument when Tim insults her new occupation as a waitress. She tries to leave, but Tim, suddenly repentant, offers to drive her to work. Now at the bar, Tim and Oscar are introduced. They sit down for a drink, and Oscar asks him what the most irresponsible thing would be to do in a bar. Tim doesn't really know that answer, and so Oscar pulls out a huge firecracker from the back. He lights it up as the customers run away, stepping back as it explodes. Smoke fills the bar, chairs are set on fire, and several things shatter, but luckily, that's the worst of the damage. So he explains to Tim that he just did the most irresponsible thing he could think of, but Gloria will still stay here in the bar with him. Tim's all shocked. He grabs Gloria's hand and tries to make her leave, but she refuses. She knows that if she doesn't entirely obey Oscar, he'll make good on his word and use his giant robot to destroy Soul. So Tim drops an ultimatum, stating that he's leaving town tomorrow at midday and hopes that she'll be with him. Now that night, Gloria goes home after her shift and finds Oscar waiting for her while drinking a beer. She tells him to get out, but he refuses, explaining that he's there to make sure that she doesn't leave town with Tim. Now unsure of what to do, with Oscar leveraging the monster against her, Gloria scratches her head anxiously. However, as she does so, she recalls more about that day 25 years ago. We find out that when Oscar climbed the fence to retrieve that project, the miniature replica of Soul, Gloria followed him into the site, and he found her project stuck in branches and pulled it down from where it was caught. Then, assuming that no one was looking, he crushed it. Now, young Gloria, seeing this, is enraged, and her anger seemed to attract lightning to strike her head, causing blood to stream from her forehead. The lightning also strikes Oscar, and they both fall unconscious. He was holding a toy robot, while in her hands was a little toy monster. Both toys look exactly like the monsters that appeared in Soul. So now Gloria realizes that Oscar hates himself. He hates how his life is so small and uninteresting as compared to hers. And she tells him this, and then proceeds to call Tim. Alarms ring on the TV, and both adults realize that it'll soon be 8:05. Oscar rushes for the door, but Gloria strikes him over the head with a chair. Then he charges at her with a piece of wood torn from the couch, and she retaliates by making a bookshelf fall on him. Well, he makes a run for it, leaping from the upstairs window down to the pool and into the streets. They're both racing for the playground. Oscar's punching her so hard that she falls to the floor, unable to stop him as he stomps through the playground, crushing an entire neighborhood in Seoul. Now Gloria returns home and crawls into bed. On the wall, the maps that she's drawn connecting Seoul and the playground have turned upside down, which makes her realize something. She packs a bag, calls a cab, and then rushes to the airport. Oscar notices her absence and, drinking beer after beer, waits in the playground for 8:05 a.m., as that's the only time he can control the robot. When Gloria gets to her destination, she calls Tim to tell him that she's all right. And as she hangs up the call, we realize that Gloria is in Seoul. The alarms ring, signaling that it's time for monsters to make an appearance. Oscar steps onto the playground, beginning his robot rampage in Seoul. Korean civilians are scattering from this giant robot, but Gloria walks closer to it. Back on the playground, Oscar suddenly hears a distant rumbling as Gloria walks closer to the robot. Now that she's in Seoul, the monster has appeared in her hometown, right in front of Oscar. He tries to run, but Gloria rushes forward and grabs at the air. In front of her, the robot floats as if it's being picked up by invisible hands. Oscar begs to be put down, but the monster throws him. In Seoul, the robot is thrown thousands of feet away, and back in the US, his body does the same. The citizens of Korea rejoice, believing that the robot is now dead and won't harm him anymore. Afterwards, Gloria steps into a Korean bar and asks the bartender if she'd like to hear an amazing story. And that wraps it up. You know, not for nothing, you gotta love how original this film is. It's got a fresh mix of romantic comedy meeting creature feature. Or did you think that the monster metaphor was like too weird and nonsensical? Why don't you let us know in the comments below with that hashtag Cinema Recap. Till next time.